Hey everybody out there, this is Seto Kaiba from your Yu-Gi-Oh! Chat channel, and today guys we are going to be discussing something that I was recently discussing and having some talks about and just talking and whatnot about at my locals and also with my Yu-Gi-Oh! Friends that I duel with and things of this people of this nature. So guys, the topic we were discussing and it got brought up was what type of decks are more dominant nowadays? Decks that the player makes the deck, or does the deck make the player? Now, first off, you may be wondering yourself, what do I mean by the player makes the deck and the deck makes the player? Now, granted, every deck in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! The player has some input in what he puts into that deck. There's no one holding a gun to their head and saying, you must play these cards in this deck. All decks must play these cards. No, nobody is saying that. Some players prefer, have certain feelings about certain different cards and certain decks they play, so they don't play those cards or they play those cards, just depending upon the person. Forgive me if that got a little confusing there. But what I mean by the player makes the deck, like I said, every player has a choice to play what they want to in their own deck. But what I mean really is, does the player, when the player makes the deck, does he take a lower class deck, a deck that's not so good, it's maybe not the top tier deck, it may not be the best deck out there, but he makes that deck more than what it is. He uses his brain, he tries to get get the most advantage of all the cards he plays in that deck. He tries to make the most of that deck, make it the best he can possibly make that deck. Even though it may not be the best deck and it may be overlooked, he tries to make the best of it. Or the other side of the coin, where the deck makes the player. Maybe you may be asking yourself, what do I mean by the deck makes the player? Well, think of it this way: E-Dragons in their prime. It didn't matter what type of E-Dragon deck you played. Just because they were E-Dragons, dragons ran over everything. And when I mean E-Dragons in their prime, I mean right after Techion. So think of it that way, okay, guys? Decks that are kind of autopilot, quote unquote. I don't like using that word, but I think you understand what I mean. You can just go do 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 do, just like derp 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 derp, whatever. The deck runs itself in a way. But what I mean by a player makes the deck, the player calls the shots, involves more of a process and thinking and things of that nature. And what we were talking about, locals, is think of it back in the day. The player had more of an input of what he played in his deck. There was no, yes, there were the Cyber Cistern, yes, there was the Magical Scientist type decks, there were decks of this nature, Scapegoat type decks, Yatagarasu, Danzaluk, there was a whole bunch of different type of decks like that. But the player could maybe tech in a couple cards to his own playing style back then, like Cannon Soldier. I know there was a whole bunch of different type of things players used to play back then that just was the own little tech-in things they would use to play with. Scapegoat for defensive purposes. Scapegoat with Cannon Soldier. Just a cool little different combos they used to use back then. But nowadays you don't see that as much. And I feel that nowadays, over time, decks have become more simplistic in nature. It's more of a, you don't have to think through your plays. The lower class decks that come out now, I would say you do have to think through your plays. You have to think of ways to making that deck the best it can be. But decks are more simplistic than they used to be, I would say, overall. Especially tier decks. Those real dominating decks we talk about, like E-Dragons or decks of this nature. There are some tier decks out there that I would say do involve some thinking and some skill and thinking through your plays and what to do and what to, certain situations. But I think Yu-Gi-Oh! Over time has gotten more simplistic. And I feel that the reason is people want to play more simplistic decks. It's more easier for up-and-coming Yu-Gi-Oh! Players, young players, to understand simple decks that are very powerful. Though I do believe that simple decks and more, decks that are just like sacky, I guess you could say sacky in a way, are unhealthy for the game. They are simpler for other Yu-Gi-Oh! Players to play with. Though I do not think that in the long run, this makes a good Yu-Gi-Oh! Duelist in the long run, playing a deck that doesn't take thinking and ability, because you don't learn from your mistakes, because you're just sacking your way through everything. That's my personal take, but I'll leave that for another video that I plan to do very soon. So my question, guys, for you today is, do you feel that over the course of Yu-Gi-Oh!, if you've been playing for a long time, do you feel Yu-Gi-Oh! Has gotten more simplistic in its deck making? And do you feel that Which one do you feel is more healthier for the game? Decks that take thinking and skill and some skill to think through your plays, or simplistic decks? And which one do you think can continue to dominate in Yu-Gi-Oh? Simplistic decks or decks that take skill thinking? I think there's a good mixture of both. There are some decks out there that do take a little bit of each. There's some decks that take more than the other, but each deck in its own right, depending upon the player, I guess you could say, depends upon how he plays the deck, I guess. But those are my questions I'm asking you guys. And until next time, guys, take care, have fun dueling, good luck dueling, and I hope I explained this topic and what we were discussing about at locals and what I posed to you guys. The questions as, do you think Yu-Gi-Oh has become more simplistic in its deck making? Do you believe Yu-Gi-Oh has become more simplistic in its deck making over time? And which one do you think is going to continue to dominate in Yu-Gi-Oh? Simplistic deck making or decks that take more thought process to them? And until next time, guys, take care. Seto Kaiba, I'm out of here, guys.